Hi everyone! Today's video is an honest, in-depth review of the Master Print edition of Goa. This is a prototype version that was kindly given to us by Quined Games, who also sponsored this video. We will go through all topics one by one, including the rulebook, the setup time, the auction system, the action system, the pace of the game, and all the modules that are included in the box. What we won't analyze are the components of the game because, as I just mentioned, it is a prototype. We don't have a good idea of what it's going to look like in its final version. But of course, since it is a reprint, a new edition, the artwork has changed. It's much brighter and colorful than the previous edition. So if you enjoy that, as we do, it's a good change compared to the previous prints. So let's start with the first introduction to the game, which is usually the rulebook. We are happy to report that it is another one of those Quined Games rulebooks that we very much enjoy. It helps a lot that the game is quite simple and straightforward. There aren't a lot of rules included in it if you take out the modules, which you usually introduce in later plays, so learning the basic flow of the game and being ready to play doesn't really take a lot of time. The rulebook has a good structure, it includes everything we needed to know. I don't think we ever had any questions come up that we didn't have the answers to. So that's definitely something that set us up to enjoy even our very first play of the game. The setup of the game is also quite fast. It only includes giving the players a couple of components and setting up the grid of tiles, which is simply done by shuffling a few tiles and randomly placing them on the corresponding spaces on the main board. Apart from that, a single deck of cards that needs to be shuffled and a few cards that need to be placed on the sides of the board as well. It only takes a few minutes to do all of that and be ready to play. Moving on to the actual gameplay, a game of Goa is played over the course of 8 rounds and each round consists of 2 distinct phases. Well, the rulebook says 3, but it's actually 2 in the way they work, and I will explain soon why. One of them is the auction phase, which the rulebook splits into 2, but it is actually an auction phase, and then we go through the action phase. In our opinion, the auction phase is the juice of the game and where all the good stuff happen, and the action phase is a fast-paced phase that comes as the result of whatever happened in the auction phase. At the beginning, when you first read the rulebook, they sound as if they are disconnected and it would feel as if you're doing 2 separate things throughout the game, but once you start playing, you realize how important the decisions you make on one of the phases are for the other phase. They absolutely affect each other, they feel cohesive, and while to an extent they are separated, it is actually in a good way. And I will explain why right away. Each of the 8 rounds starts with the auction phase. And during each auction phase, starting with the first player, players place markers on the spaces of the grid that will be auctioned as soon as all markers have been placed. Once that happens, the auctions begin. The auctioneer is always the player who placed the specific marker. The first player places a marker both for the first player token that will be auctioned to see where it goes for the next round, but also on a tile the same way every other player does. During the auction, starting with the player that sits to the left of the auctioneer, all players have a single opportunity to place a bid. As soon as this bid is placed, the next player either bids or passes, and that happens for each player in player order. As soon as the round comes back to the auctioneer, they have 2 choices. They can either accept the best bid, take the money from the player who placed the bid, and that player wins whatever was auctioned, either the first player marker or a tile, or they can pay 1 money less than the highest bid to the bank in order to take the tile themselves. More often than not, the second thing happens. So the auctioneer is usually the one who takes the tile they have marked, not always of course, but it happens quite often, which means that the bidding process is both an auction but also an opportunity for other players to set the price for the auctioneer instead of actually bidding for the tile. A lot of times it's both. You may want a tile and you see how much you are willing to bid, but at the same time you are trying to raise the price enough so that the auctioneer does not get something for free or for very cheap. It is important, and that's why I will say it again, that if anyone else apart from the auctioneer wins the bid, the auctioneer takes the money. The money do not go to the bank. And that's a very important aspect of the auction phase because it keeps the money going from one player to the next and makes the bids more important than they would be if the money would go to the bank. You want to raise the price, but at the same time you are careful because if the auctioneer accepts the bid and they take a lot of money, they can have a lot of power in the upcoming auctions, whether they are on the same round or on the next. What we enjoyed the most about the auctions though is that the money you spend on auctions are only used during the auction phase. The action phase has no requirements for money, only for resources. You have opportunities to get money and prepare for the next round. But in a sense, you don't feel bad when you spend everything in order to get something good. Of course, you have to budget for the next round's auction, and the richest player at the end of the game gets points, which means that money never becomes irrelevant up until the very end of the game. But it's all about the auctions. The feeling that you can run out of money and it's gonna be fine because you know you won't need them during the action phase is a very pleasant one. Now, of course, as with any auction system, it works best with 3 or 4 players, but as we also said at the first impressions, it works quite well with 2 players as well, which was quite surprising. Auction and bidding games usually don't work very well with 2 players, but this one does. It feels quite different because you can kind of keep track of what your opponent has, which is good for strategy but bad for the anxiety and suspense of auctions. But again, it feels different, but it works quite well. So even if you are playing with 2 players, the game will work quite well for you as well. We would recommend it for more players, both for that reason, but also because when you have more players in the group, more of the tiles will get auctioned throughout the game. So it's kind of easier to plan ahead and know that if you want something, it will probably at some point get auctioned. Don't get fooled though, because the first player holds a lot of power in the decision of which tiles will be auctioned for the next round. The way the markers are placed around the grid, starting with the first player, have some placement rules that only allow you to place markers on adjacent tiles, even if they are diagonally. But in any case, the starting player decides pretty much which area of the grid is going to be auctioned for the round. So if you really want to know which tiles will be auctioned next round, you have to bid for the first player marker. But if you bid for the first player marker and the auctioneer accepts your bid, it means that they will be rich and bid a lot of money for the important tiles on the current auction. And you probably start getting an idea of how complex that is and how many decisions you have to make in a pretty short amount of time, and you do that 8 times within the game, which is a lot of fun. Now, as far as the first player goes though, they have the decision of where the auction will begin on the grid. They get to auction 2 things, the first player marker and a tile of their choice. Since they are the first player, they also got priority on going up on the tracks, which is important at certain points of the game. And they get priority on getting the outpost tiles. That is first come, first serve. Everyone can get an outpost, but you get to choose which one you want to get if you go first. So all of that, in addition to the fact that when you gain the first player marker, you also get a compass card, which gives you an extra action for the round, is quite powerful. Especially at 2 players and even at 3 players, being the first player is so important that we felt it may be a bit too important. You see a nice tile, you want to bid for it, but you have to keep in mind that if you lose the first player marker, you may actually lose the game overall. If you let a player hold the first player marker for too long throughout the game, they are more likely to win the game. The compass card that gives them an extra action for the next round is usually spent to get more money in order to be more powerful during the next auction phase, and this goes into a never-ending circle that you cannot let keep happening for 8 times in a row. With more players, the responsibility splits a bit. So one of the 3 other players is probably going to get the first player marker, but even then, that responsibility usually goes to the player who's right before the auctioneer, the first player, because, you know, you can pass and expect the next person to put some pressure, and then the next person doesn't bid either, and all the pressure is left to the final player who has to get the responsibility of taking the first player marker of the first player. Did that make any sense? In any case, long story short, first player marker, very important, maybe too important. Now, because of all of that mess that I just explained with the auctions, which is super fun, don't get me wrong, but while there are multiple paths to victory, and you can win in different ways, you get points from doing different things, playing again and again felt like which path you would choose to lead you to victory didn't entirely depend on you. It was mostly a situation of seeing which tiles are up for auction, choosing which ones you want to really bid on, sometimes getting them, sometimes not getting them, and then adjusting to that. Whether you want to follow a certain path to victory when the game begins, if you are not the first player and you don't get to choose which area of the board will get auctioned in the very first round, it's very likely that you will end up getting tiles that do not really lead you down the path you just chose. It will be different every time, but you have a lot less agency and choice than we initially thought when we first played the game. It's more of a adjust to whatever you get kind of situation instead of choosing a path and sticking to that. You kind of have to plan ahead, but at the same time you have to remain flexible, especially again if you are not the first player for the next round's auction. All of those decisions though are usually simple and fast to make, which makes the game a very fast-paced game with pretty much no downtime. During the auction, everyone is involved, everyone has to stay focused and see whatever happens around the table, evaluate the dynamics and make choices. But the action phase is pretty fast. So yeah, you take turns taking actions, but the actions are usually as simple as spending some resources, going down on a track or getting some resources, pretty simple basic stuff. So it goes by very fast, even if it is an important part of the game. The 8 rounds sound like a lot at the beginning, but they go by very fast and it's a pretty short and fast game. Of course, the more players you have in the group, the longer the game will take, but it's not a lot in any case. Also, there is nothing you need to do in between rounds, apart from the exact middle of the game. After the 4th round, you have to take out all the tiles on the main board and replace them with another set of tiles, but even that takes like a minute or so to complete, and then you are ready to keep going. Of course, at the same time, while you initially think that you have a lot of time to do a lot of things because it's 8 rounds, right? Well, it's not. 3 actions per round, maybe a bit more if you get compass cards for 8 rounds. With the way the game is structured, leaves you no room to do nearly enough of what you initially planned to do. There is no way that you will actually accomplish whatever you had planned, because towards the end you realize that time is running out and you have to make hard decisions on what you will actually try to do instead of what you initially wanted to do. Sometimes that can be annoying. Most of the times it means that you want to play again to see if you can go just one step further than you did the previous time. So far we have only talked about the base game, so to speak, which if you play a lot of times can get quite repetitive, to be honest, but the box comes with a bunch of modules in it. The first one, which is not very much a module as much as it is a variant, it includes a way that you can play without any luck involved. So there is an action in the game that allows you to get an outpost that will give you resources and points at the end of the game, and with the rules as written, I think the way the rules were in previous editions as well, maybe the first edition. You have to take some chances because you take the decision to go for a certain outpost and then you reveal a couple of cards, and if you get unlucky, you may not be able to get the outpost. There is a variant included in the game that replaces all of that with a process that includes no luck at all, so that's up to you to decide whether you want to play with a little bit of push your luck system or with 0 luck involved. But also, at least the box we got had 4 modules in it that changed the game in various ways, interesting ways that change the game in one way or another. All of them are fun. All of them have minimal rules included in them, and while they seem light and unimportant, they actually have huge impact on the decisions you make throughout the game. What this means is that whether there is something in the game that you don't enjoy or not, there is probably one of the modules that can adjust that to your liking. Once you play the game long enough, you can decide which of the modules you enjoy, which of them change the things that you don't like, and you can probably find a specific way to play the game that will suit your group and their needs. With all of that, the repetitiveness goes out the window and it is replaced by a lot of variety, a lot of replay value, and a lot to explore in a single box. Since it is a prototype, we don't know if there is even more to explore in the final version of the game, but I don't think it's needed either. If there is something extra, it's truly something extra. With all of that being said, we hope that you have all the information you need to see if it is a game that you would enjoy or not. It is an older game and it kind of reminded us of older games that were simpler and more straightforward, but at the same time, it has a unique feel to it, and there is a reason that it stood the test of time. If you decide that you are interested to know more about the game, go follow the project on Gamefound. It is currently live, so don't wait too much on that. And let us know if there is anything else that you'd like to know that we didn't cover within the video. If you found the video useful, subscribe, leave a thumbs up, help the channel grow so that we can make more videos like this. And I hope to see you in the next one. Until then.